Continuing with our framework discussion, we just talked through a very important mental model around hypothesis, why, and next steps. This should always be in your head, especially when we're applying to this to the framework. So this is the framework we had from a previous video. And in this case, we want to think about what is my hypothesis, why, and what are the next steps to get there. The next steps when you're thinking about a framework level hypothesis, why, next steps is really what kind of information am I looking for? Most cases have a couple of exhibits behind them, so you're really asking for some type of information on an exhibit. If you've seen enough cases, almost every case that has something to do with profit will have revenue information, typically by product line, sometimes over a period of time to see historic trends. You'll also sometimes see pricing information within that. You could also see cost information as well. Any of those are possibilities, but you should have an inclination based on the details in the case, whether they're hinting at some revenue changes over time, some pricing pressures, changes in the production facilities, something that will hint to you which direction to go. And you should use this framework to get there. So at the end of your walkthrough, you've just established that you're going to go through these three areas. You've talked through the various topics you want to explore within those three areas. And at the very end of that, you want to switch from presentation mode. And remember, we said we're in presentation mode as we're walking through this, into problem solving mode. And this is where you're problem solving. Hypothesis, why, next step. So I now have to say, well, what is my hypothesis here? I probably think the best place to go is thinking about costs. So I might say, in order to address this profitability problem, I would like to focus on the cost structure here, because I think that rising costs are contributing to the profitability issue, and we should explore that first. So I addressed why. For next steps, I'd like to segment our variable costs into its component parts, and specifically things like cost per unit or labor hours would be where I would start. See, what I did there is I talked about things like segmentation. I gave a clear hypothesis, why, and what next pieces of information would help me better address the profitability problem. Some people get hung up on this and they're worried, what if I'm wrong? What happens if I say variable cost, but really it's a fixed cost problem? Well, that's not an issue. If variable costs have nothing to do with the case, you've just eliminated something. You've further refined your hypothesis at this point then. You say, I'd like to go in the direction of variable costs. The interviewer says, that's a great idea. Costs seem to be a very important part, but actually we don't have any information on our variable costs. Ding, ding, ding. We just found out that variable costs are not the issue. Now we can focus on fixed costs. Now we know for sure it's going to be about fixed costs. So the next step says, okay, great. I'm going back and refining my hypothesis. Now you might say, in order to address the profitability problems, I think we should address the fixed costs. And to do that, I would like to segment them into their component parts, such as manufacturing and maybe marketing. So do we have any more information on manufacturing and marketing? Then your interviewer will probably say, great, though that's a very important place we should go. Here's a chart about the marketing spend over the last 5 years. Now we know that this is part of it, and you can keep your framework in front of you as your agenda to make sure that you're addressing all of the right pieces as you go through the case. Here we found out more information, and we'll go into marketing as a matter of next steps. Once I know that marketing is where we're going and I get an exhibit, I immediately go to my next page and I start writing about marketing.